Good evening, everybody, and this is the 7:30/2020 meeting of Dallas Social Distancing Toastmasters. Still on the web and not sure when we will go back to in-person meetings at this point, but we are still here. We have 3 speeches tonight. I will be your meeting coordinator, and I'll just go over a couple of things for anybody who is new. If you wiggle the cursor, you will notice that there's a mute button, of course, in the lower left if you're on a PC or a Mac. You may find it in a different spot if you're on a tablet. You'll also notice that there is a participant button and a chat button, should you be interested in opening either of those windows. I normally keep the chat open. The chat allows you to have a pull down so that you can select to chat to everyone or to a person individually, which will be how you will cast your votes for any of our contested races, and we have several tonight. So familiarize yourself with the chat button. Again, this is being recorded, so just so that you're aware, and that's on the record. At this point, we do have a couple, let's see, we have at least 1 guest, probably 2, I guess, although one is a returning guest, but I'm going to turn it over to our Toastmaster who can do all of those introductions. If you would, please, let me go ahead as facilitator to show you where the agenda is, just in case. I'll go ahead and do that for them, since I happen to have it up. Sharing my screen. If you were to go to the DallasSocialToastmasters.com website, that is DallasSocialToastmasters.com, you will find right here under the members section, current agenda. If you just click on that, it will bring up a copy of tonight's agenda so that you can follow along with our proceedings tonight and who all is performing a duty. For what it's worth, if you also need it, you can find it from the member section. If you happen to set on the member section more than the home page, it is also right here under meeting agenda in the box on the left-hand side. And with that, I will let our meeting get started by passing it to our first of several people tonight. Invocation and pledge, Rob Giles.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. I greatly appreciate that. I do want to say thank you and welcome for our guests tonight. We appreciate that you are here tonight. And tonight, I would also like to stress something that we have varying, I guess, relationships, and this includes both family and friends. Recently, myself, I have been with my family, experiencing some great time with my family that I haven't in quite a while, or it seems longer than it probably is just because of the situation that we have in our country and in our world. But I would like for you to possibly think about the relationships that you have around you and maybe open up to those and be a little bit more forgiving if things are in a rough patch, and possibly be more open to some other people's points of view so that we can all get along together, especially family members. That's, I think, very important, especially as your life goes on. So I would recommend that you do that. And with that said, I will say, let's do that as our Toastmasters Club as usual. At this point, I'm going to hand this over to our Toastmaster, unless, Mark, you have something else to say.
I do not.
Okay. Well,
one brief comment.
There you go, Mr. President.
I want to obviously, Janice has been around a few Toastmasters meetings, but Martha, you may see us doing that. That's our symbol of applauding. When we're in person, we usually applaud the speakers and the people that give reports. It's a little more awkward when some of us are muted during the course of the meeting. So that's what that's about. It's a way of simply giving encouragement to those that are speaking. And again, for both Janice and Martha, thank you all again for being here. At this point, I will turn it over to our Toastmaster for the evening, Nicholas Elwood.
Thank you very much, Mark, and welcome members and fellow guests. Welcome to tonight's edition of Dallas Social Distancing Toastmaster. The theme for tonight is evident by the title on the agenda, Google employees working from home. I really thought this would be a fitting theme for tonight because of our current predicament with the pandemic. with the job market, it's in toils and unemployment rate rising to 11% for the month of June. Excuse me. Opportunities are becoming scarce for applicants. More importantly, as more social restrictions take place in every state, many companies are requiring their employees right now to stay at home. This is a really strong time and opportunity for people to reflect on what they have achieved and, really what they hope to achieve in the next 1 to 5 years. At this time, I'm going to introduce our duty holders for this evening. So Dagan, I have you as timer for this evening. Can you please explain your duty to us?
Sure. As timer today, it's my responsibility to time the different segments of the meeting. That's going to be the speeches, the table topics, and evaluations. Now, there's various time frames on the speakers. So basically, when the speaker hits their minimum time, they'll get a green flag. And when they meet the middle range, they'll get the yellow. And when they hit their end time, they'll get the red. And speakers have 30 seconds on either side to be able to qualify. Now, when it comes to table topics, it's the 1 to 2 minutes. So you must hit one minute. In that 1 minute, you'll get the green, 1.5 yellow, and 2 minutes red. And then you have 30 seconds after that to wrap up. Evaluations are 2 to 3 minutes. So at 2 minutes, you'll get the green, 2.5 yellow, and 3 red. And evaluators have 30 seconds on either side to qualify on their time. Then I'll give my report when called upon. And during this evaluation section, since I'm an evaluator, John Vessels will be timing me for that. So back to you, Toastmaster.
Thank you, Dagan. So on to the next role. Mark Sims, I have you as the posture monitor for this evening. Can you please explain your duty to us?
As posture monitor, I'll be looking for any type of gestures or nonverbal expressions that may detract from your message. Obviously, if we were meeting in person and someone had hands jammed in pockets or hands on hips or wringing their hands, something of that nature, we could more easily point that out. But on the screen, you may still do something, whether it's playing with your glasses or anything, again, that detracts the audience from your message. I will make a note of, and then I will report when called upon by the general evaluator. Mr. Toastmaster.
Great. Thank you, Mark. On to the next role. Tanya, I have you as double duties tonight, all counter and grammarian for this evening. Can you please explain your double duties to us?
Yes, hello, good evening. As the odd counter, I will be listening for crutch words as we're speaking throughout the meeting. Crutch words like ahs and ums and you knows, and I'll be recording those. I'll be tagging and recording the people who are using those crutch words, and I will have a report at the end of the meeting. And then as a grammarian, I will be looking for interesting or unique words that we're using, as well as inappropriate words. And also I have the word of the day, and this is the word, let's see, can you see that? Conundrum. It means a confusing or a difficult problem or question, conundrum. And so during the table topics, everyone needs to use the word of the day, conundrum. Working from home and balancing work and life can sometimes be a conundrum. So please make sure that you use it in the table topics in order to qualify. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thanks, Tanya. And last but not least, Marcia, I actually have you as the vote counter for this evening. Can you please explain your duty to us? Marcia, I think you're on mute.
Yes, I was. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. As vote counter, I will accept votes through the private chat to myself and count the votes after the audience votes for best speaker, best table topic speaker, best evaluator, and the best of the big three. The big three are the Toastmaster, the table topics master, and the general evaluator. I will record which person wins in each category. I myself will not cast a vote except in the case of a tie, in which case I will cast a vote to break the tie, but I will not communicate whether or not there was a tie vote. Again, place your vote by sending a message in the private chat to myself. At the end of the meeting, I will announce all winners. Please be sure to send comments to each speaker, evaluator, and table topics participant by sending private chat messages to each person directly. Mr. Toastmaster?
Great. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you all for participating tonight. I need to quickly transition into our prepared speeches since we actually have 3 tonight. It's going to be a busy night. Our first prepared speech is going to be from Mark Schroeder, and his title is actually Having Fun with Art. Dagan is actually going to be evaluating Mark on his speech tonight. Dagan, can you tell us about how you're going to be evaluating his speech?
All right, so basically, I'm going to evaluate him. He wants me to make sure he makes his topic interesting and also the use of the media. So that's pretty much it. That's how I'm going to evaluate him on that. And his title is Having Fun with Art, and it's 6 to 8 minutes. Back to you, Toastmaster.
All right. Thank you very much, Dagan. And as a reminder for all speakers, make sure you actually pin Dagan as the timer or have his screen on the Zoom chat visible. And last but not least, Having Fun with Art, Mark Schroeder. Mark Schroeder, Having Fun with Art.
Timer, if you would, give me just 1 second to get a share going. Can you confirm that the share is going?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Great.
I see a black screen.
Black screen is what it's supposed to be.
Okay.
Fellow Toastmasters, back in college, one of the classes that I took was a class in art history. And I really enjoyed the art history class because it was taught in a very non-boring way by Alessandro Comini. I wanted to share some of that with you today because I think that art certainly is an important thing, and it can be very dry and very dull and boring, but this is the perfect media for doing a demonstration of some art today, so I thought I would do that. I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to start with one that everybody pretty much recognizes, the Mona Lisa. Leonardo da Vinci, of course, is the painter of this particular work of art. And everyone remarks about the subtle smile and the questions of who actually is the model. But there's one other thing about this that most people do not remark on. And it is also part of why maybe the image looks as unusual as it does. Have you noticed? She does not have any eyebrows. Now, why in the world would she not have any eyebrows? There is a real possibility that this particular art is actually unfinished. Da Vinci was a very strong perfectionist. And it's very possible that he got to some point in this, did not like the work that he had done, and decided he just wasn't going to finish it. And so that may be why there are no eyebrows. Next, I don't know how many people recognize this. This, of course, is Vincent van Gogh. It's called A Starry Night. What is unusual about this, of course, are all of the swirls and the halos around everything. Now, if you go back to the true history of this, it turns out Van Gogh was in a mental asylum at the time, mental institution. He also had vision problems, and he was probably taking digitalis. Digitalis is a drug that might have affected some of the yellows in this and caused him to see yellow when other people didn't see yellow. He also suffered from something that is known as narrow angle glaucoma. Narrow angle glaucoma causes all of these halo effects. So was he being innovative, or was he merely painting what he could see and he just couldn't see very well? Something that you just normally don't think about. Next up, how many people recognize this painting? I hope not very many, because you might think this is the Scream, but it isn't. This is actually the Scream as if it were done by Van Gogh. That is the real Scream. But a lot of other people have done it as jokes or as hoaxes, and of course that is the Scream done by Van Gogh. Edvard Munch's painting is one of the other classics that you will often see. This is a particularly unusual artist. The artist is Gustav Klimt. Klimt has a propensity for very good realistic paintings of people, but then he draws and paints these elaborate tapestries of colors and shapes over them, often in golds and yellows. This one is called Portrait of Adele Bloch-Bauer. Not that the title is particularly important, but it's true. The one that is more familiar and more famous is Gustav Klimt's The Kiss, which suffers from the same treatment. All the rectangles and yellow and gold on the left and the swirls on the right. The thing that is unusual about Gustav Klimt is these days he is thought of pretty much as a pervert. And the reason for that is what happened at his death. At his death, somebody came into his studio and they found an unfinished work of art. That unfinished work of art happened to have a female figure, and he had outlined the very same sort of tapestry all over the female figure's body at the bottom, and sort of blocked in where all of the rectangles and the circles were going to go. But what was interesting about the painting was he had painted the entire female in explicit detail, 100%, as if it was going to be the entire painting, all the way down to each pubic hair. And then he covered it over with this stuff. And there is a large body of evidence that these, probably underneath all of that gold and yellow, are nudes. Next up, Georges Seurat. This is a very unusual painting and probably the start of my problems with restaurants. This particular painting is a pointillism painting. There is not a single brush stroke in it. I'm going to focus on the area right here in the center with the umbrella and the lady sitting down, and bring it in really, really tight. Nothing but little dots of color, and each one of these dots of color was put on with a brush. Again, no strokes, everything done with nothing but dots of color to achieve the overall effect. I cannot imagine how long it took to do a painting like this, but it turns out if you go into Italian restaurants typically where you have the paper tablecloths and they give you all of the Crayolas, if you put one of those in your hand like an ice pick and go bang, 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 you can make little bitty dots on the table, probably for about maybe something like 8 minutes before they throw you out, usually. Unless, of course, you're in Plano and have a little child, in which case they'll usually let you do it all during dinner because nobody's going to stop little Damien from doing that. But it was the start of my doing something like this in restaurants. Next up, this is not one of his particularly common works. This is by Piet Mondrian. It is called Trees. And if you look at it and look at the entire progression across when he started drawing trees and painting trees to his final work, you can still see that there are some leaves in figurative style and some branching. So there is something about this that says trees to people. But Piet Mondrian is not known so much for this as for works of this nature. If you put these up, a lot of people recognize this as a Mondrian. Now, there's no particular Mondrian that is 100% the definitive one, but a lot of his works look exactly like this. And this is absolutely perfect for those paper tablecloths with Crayolas. I will regularly draw one of these and I will sign it underneath, Mark Mondrian, just to make people wonder if I happen to be a long lost relative. Moving from Mondrian, oh, I absolutely love these. There are so many artists that understand how many eyes go on the same side of a nose, and it's usually not two. This artist does not seem to do that. Does anybody happen to know the artist for this one? Do I see any raise of hands real quick? We have at least one. All right, we'll see if you're right. The answer is Pablo Picasso. Yep, this is a Picasso, believe it or not. What is particularly interesting about this, not only is it an easy one to duplicate if you happen to be in a restaurant with some crayons, this particular painting sold for $15 million recently at a Christie's auction. So it is, in that sense, a very famous painting. And finally, American Gothic. Everyone has seen this painting. This is by Grant Wood. Now, looking at this painting, at first you might think that this is a husband and his wife. You look at it a little bit closer and you think, well, she's maybe a little bit too young, so it might be a father and his daughter, because after all, he certainly does not look like Brad Pitt and she's a lot younger than he is. Turns out it's none of the above. I don't want to ruin it for you, but I'm going to. The lady on the left is Grant Wood's sister, Harriet, and the gentleman is his 62-year-old dentist. So that concludes our tour through the gallery tonight. I hope that you have enjoyed it, and I hope that you will go out and occasionally expose yourself to art. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Mark. Great speech. Now, I'm going to give a brief moment for fellow members and guests to send a private message to Mark on his speech. You know, any thoughts or comments that you all had, and please send that in the chat box on the right-hand side. All right, on to the second speech. Our second prepared speech tonight is going to be from Rob Giles, and his title is Simply Effective. Marcia tonight is going to be evaluating Rob on his speech. Marcia, can you tell us a little bit about how you will be evaluating his speech?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. This evening, I will be evaluating Mr. Giles by way of the 3-2-1 method. And in that method, I will be looking forward sharing out 3 things that I liked about his speech, 2 things potentially he could improve on, and then lastly, 1 thing that I really liked. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Rob Giles with his speech, 5 to 7 minutes, entitled Simply Effective. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Marcia. How many of you have heard the acronym KISS, KISS? Raise of hands. Okay, it looks like most of you, if not all of you, have heard that. Then you likely know what it means or what it stands for, which is keep it simple, stupid. Simple can sometimes be the best way. In life, sometimes it can lead to the most profound things. For myself, I had a job quite some time ago at a supermarket chain in its IT, or information technology, support department. And during this time, I relied on a lot of my teammates, a lot of my coworkers. And when I say relied, I should say relied, because I didn't actually get them to do things for me, but I relied on them to help. If I couldn't do it, I'd have them having my back. I especially relied on one person, and her name was Kim. Kim ultimately, but unofficially, was my mentor, and I, her protege. Now, when I first joined this organization, it wasn't too long before I ran across a situation that I had never experienced. It was a store, one of the stores in the chain of stores that had a power outage. And to me, this seemed pretty serious. And as I talked to the general manager of the store, it seemed catastrophic. What I want to tell you today is about this situation and how my mentor and myself worked this out, and how this specific situation helped me to see some of the things, and some of the things I didn't actually know at the time, but later on I realized. When this happened, I had the store manager go about some project in order to try to relieve the situation. And when he did, I left him on the phone and I went over to Kim. And when I approached her desk, I was trembling inside. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I felt like the world was coming to an end, but I couldn't talk to her because she was engaged with somebody else. She was talking, so I sat there patiently, just hoping that she would end her conversation. 15 seconds seemed like an infinity, kind of like your first time doing table topics. You know, when you think that the timer is actually timing 1 to 2 hours instead of 1 to 2 minutes. But I waited, and she eventually finished her conversation. She slowly swung around in her chair. She looked at me, and she said, "Hi, have a seat." I sat down. She was calm. She said, "How's it going?" Very casual, matter of fact, as if she was asking about my day. Inside, I was just going 100 miles an hour. I wanted to spit it all out, but I was calm, partly because she was calm. And I explained to her the situation. She went ahead and said, "Oh, I understand, absolutely. When I was here, not too long after I started, I had a similar experience, and I was so nervous." This helped me a lot too. It continued to calm my nerves, and I felt like I was getting a little bit more of a connection with her. She asked me what I had done already in order to try to alleviate the situation, and I explained a few items, one of which was what we do in life generally when our computers won't work: turn them off, turn them back on, a little reboot. Told her I'd done that with a couple of registers at the store, but ultimately the registers would come up, but they wouldn't connect to the server. They were not making that connection. And she said, "All right, great." And then she asked me, "What do you think you might want to try in order to go from here?" And she gave me an opportunity to try to follow through in my head, maybe some logic. And so I did. I started to talk, and eventually it got to a point where I reached an epiphany of, oh yeah, this is where I was headed. I didn't even know I was headed there, but she gave me an opportunity to just go with the flow in my brain. And I finally, in the end, said, this has got to be, I think, a UPS, not United Postal Service, a universal power supply. And I thought possibly this supply wasn't working for the main server in the store. She calmly said, "That's plausible. Why don't you go ahead and give the general manager a call back and check out a few things?" So I just did that. I called, went through. As it happens, that was the problem. We got the store back up, and I felt amazed. I felt incredible. My confidence was boosted tenfold. And this was all because she didn't do the job for me. She was there. She offered support. She offered understanding. She made a connection with me. She allowed me to at least attempt to correct the situation myself. And this was not just one time that she did this type of thing. Throughout my whole time there, that's what she did for me. She was calm. She listened to what I had to say. She made connections so that I felt like I wasn't the only one who had gone through something like this. And then she let me find my way to the results. Those are the three things that I remember to this day. She stayed calm, so I stayed calm. She was understanding. She made a connection to me. She gave me an example, something that she had gone through that was similar. And finally, she let me work things out in my head so that I could come to a conclusion myself or try to find an answer myself. And because she did this, I still remember her. She is going to stay with me probably until I'm done here. Give your mentor a chance, be open, and they can help you out a lot, just like Kim helped me. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Rob. For the members and the guests, again, please send a very brief private chat message to Rob on your thoughts on his speech to avoid a conundrum, of course. Give you guys a few seconds. All right. Our third prepared speech tonight will be from Jan Waddy, and the title is Wow. Mark Sims will be evaluating Jan on her speech tonight. Mark, can you tell us about how you will be evaluating Jan's speech tonight?
Yes. Janice's goals are very, very simple, but very challenging. And that is to both write and then effectively deliver a speech to us that inspires us. So no pressure there. That's all you have to do, Janice. And what I'll do to evaluate you is follow the template where I know what you excelled at, which I expect will be a lot, what you could work on, and then how you can really challenge yourself. And I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Toastmaster, to finish the introduction.
Great, thank you, Mark. In 3 months, Jan Waddy will celebrate 42 years in Toastmasters. She has learned from every office she's held at the club, area and district levels. She is a distinguished Toastmaster, and with her husband, DTM Larry Waddy, started and mentored over 10 clubs during their tenure in Toastmasters. She says, there is no greater reward than seeing others accomplish their goals and become more confident speakers and better human beings. Today, she will present a 6 to 8 minute speech titled Wow. Please help me welcome DTM Jan Waddy.
Thank you, Nicholas. Good evening, everyone, and especially our guests tonight. When Rob asked me if I would speak to the club, I thought, wow, what an opportunity. This evening, as I listened to the other presenters, I said again, wow, what talent. Wow. That little 3-letter expression sometimes packs a punch mightier than what any words can express. As a matter of fact, I've come to understand that that's exactly what that means. Wow, without words. When life presents us with things that leave us speechless, we usually say, wow. Now for me, packed inside that little 3-letter word is a triple message. Hope is boundless and contagious. Life is fragile, and love connects us forever. Let me explain. I awoke early one winter morning, feeling rather unnecessary. Now that's a term I have penned myself when I'm feeling listless and tired. I sluggishly went through the routine of brushing my teeth, washing my face, and I was schlumping my way to the kitchen for a cup of coffee. Something caught my eye in the hallway. It was a visual conundrum, actually. I was just noticing in the periphery of my vision something different. It was coming from the window of my sewing room, and the window in my sewing room faces east. I turned to see the most magnificent reds and oranges and golds and pinks against a pale blue sky. And the sunlight had been a backlight for the naked trees on the horizon. The picture that Mother Nature had painted would have put Van Gogh, Rembrandt, Monet, all of them to shame. By now, I was no longer sluggish. I was fully awake. And I wanted to tell anyone who would listen about the beauty to be had if we but pay attention. I could face the rest of the day undaunted, filled with boundless energy and hope. That, for me, was a wow moment as I stood there dead in my tracks to just watch the sunrise. But not all wow moments are equal. The hope and contagion that an 18-month-old feels after he's gone potty in the potty chair and his mom says, "Wow, you did it, let's tell daddy," is not the same as a teenager who has a potty mouth and uses it to berate his parent, or vice versa. We come to understand from all of this that our words have the power to either build up or tear down a spirit. We come to understand more fully that life is fragile when we use those words. And it's up to us to decide how we're going to live and how we're going to allow others to live. I'm sure each one of us has at one moment or another had wow moments when we brought some dream or goal to a fruition, when we've seen how other people live as opposed to how we take things for granted. Those are all wow moments. We look back at the accomplishments in our lives, and sometimes that's all we can say is wow. We have no words to adequately express and describe the phenomenal things we've done or experienced. These are things that are born out of love. Love of life, love of self, love of others. In the not too distant past, I was fortunate enough to have all of my children and grandchildren home at Thanksgiving time. It was a special time in my life because just 6 months earlier, I had lost my husband, my best friend. So it was special that we were all gathered there. And at that point in time, as such times warrant, we were having dinner, and after having said the grace, we were eating the meal that was so delicious and so wonderful to be shared with others. And we start, as people normally do at occasions like this, to reminisce over things that happened in the past. One of the grandchildren said she remembered how much Grandpa loved those occasions. Well, that memory led to stories from the adults about growing up in this family with this man as their father and their grandfather, and all the love that he shared in their lifetime. It was a wonderful time for me and a wonderful time for them. And as we reminisced, we laughed, we cried, we joked, and at a particular time in all of this, I just went quiet. I went quiet because I knew that Larry was there too. I could feel his presence. I could feel the warmth that was who he was. I could see that wonderful smile that nobody had like he did. And all I could do in those few moments of time was simply say, wow, Mr. Toastmaster.
Wow. Thank you, Jan.
You're welcome.
Members and guests, again, please send a private chat message to Jan on your thoughts on her speech. And I apologize in advance. I probably should have stated for all the speakers to use the word of the day, so my apologies on that. But Dagan, did all speakers qualify on time tonight?
Yeah, Mark Schroeder did not qualify, but Robin and Jan did, and you don't have to use the word of the day during speeches.
Okay, all right. Just I wanted to make sure. Okay, perfect. Tanya did, or well, I'll save that for the table topics then. Well, now, if fellow members and guests can send their votes on who they thought was the best speaker to our vote counter, Marcia, tonight in a private chat, and we will re-coordinate with her and tally votes at the end of the meeting. And now, before I actually turn it over to our table topics, I'd like to share an inspirational quote for us during these really harrowing times. The quote is, "Keep calm and carry on." And this was used actually by the British government during World War II to boost citizen morale. I had no idea about that, but I've heard this phrase. I've seen it on murals and everything all the time. And it's very fitting right now for those at home employees during this time. While some people will naturally fold under pressure and really start to be lazy working from home, you can really use this time to be learning new things, coming up with new ideas, and you can become really well-rounded. And one other quote I actually had is actually from Marla Gibbs from the old sitcom The Jeffersons. You all probably remember that show pretty well. She said, "Things could always be better, but things could always be worse." What that quote means to me is that during this chaotic time, things obviously don't look great at a 50,000-foot glance, but we can really make the most out of our situations to keep it from worsening. Now I'd like to turn it over to the table topics portion of the meeting. Also, make sure each called upon speaker has Dagan pinned or viewed on the Zoom call for time. And then make sure to also use the word of the day, which Tanya has provided in its conundrum. Lee King tonight is our table topics master tonight. And Lee, can you please explain your role in tonight's table topics portion?
Yes, my role as table topics master will be to facilitate the impromptu speaking portion of the meeting, in which I will ask a question and a member will have 1 to 2 minutes to respond to the question. They must use the word of the day, which is conundrum, and they must speak a minimum of 1 minute and a maximum of 2.5 minutes, at which point you would disqualify. So the goal would be to be done in 2 minutes. And with the theme being Google staying home until next year, that was a very interesting theme and definitely a conundrum in as far as to how to somehow fit that into table topics. So I thought that I would be a little creative and we will see what comes up. First thing that actually comes to my mind is through this whole thing with the pandemic, it's very interesting because everybody, any health professional would tell you that you need to wash your hands frequently. Well, at a major medical school, it was not here in Texas, it was actually in California. The medical school, the hospital part of the medical center, decided to do their usual checks to see how people are doing washing their hands and basic hygiene. Very interesting that 80% of hospital employees wash their hands regularly when leaving the room, which is good. The disturbing thing, however, on the other hand, is that doctors were only 20% successful in washing their hands after seeing patients. Now, needless to say, the head medical director is rather disturbed by this, and he had asked for the hospital to redo the checks, but the second time around, the medical director had asked all the physicians to vote on the day that they wanted to do the second check. So in other words, the doctors were warned well in advance that they would be needing to wash their hands more that day. Surprisingly, the doctors did improve after their vote, and on the second chance, they washed their hands 85% of the time when leaving the room. So this begs a very interesting question, which is, should this type of a policy be allowed? Should doctors be allowed to vote on when they're going to do hand washing hygiene checks or wear masks or any other protective measures to protect patients, or should it strictly be randomized? So again, the question is, should doctors be allowed to vote on the days that safety checks occur? And that question will go to Tanya.
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. To me, ooh, this should not be a conundrum. Just wash your hands, people. And of all people, please don't perform surgery on me until you have washed your hands. Don't come in the room until you washed your hands. Or wait, no. Come in the room and wash your hands so that I can see and verify that you have washed your hands. Please set an example for the rest of us. But why are we surprised? We have to remind everyone about this current virus and the importance of washing our hands. Sad to say that that is one of the ways that we can help prevent the spread, by washing our hands. Really? Haven't our mothers been telling us all this time to wash our hands before coming to dinner? Wash your hands before you leave the bathroom. But yet still, we struggle. Help us, Lord. Help us to wash our hands. Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Tanya. Overall, studies have shown that doctors have done a good job of cleaning their clothes and having them properly laundered. Probably one of the reasons is simply because some of their outfits are rather expensive. The scrubs are very cheap. Well, actually, scrubs are expensive for what you actually get for what you pay for. However, compared to some of their suits and other outfits, they're pretty cheap. However, there is one piece of clothing that consistently, whenever has been tested, is not properly cleaned and is actually now considered a very dirty piece of equipment for doctors. And my question is simply, what piece of clothing do you think does not get washed like it's is supposed to, according to CDC guidelines. My question goes to Nicholas.
Great, thank you, Lee. If I had to guess which article of clothing or material that doctors do not wash enough, I would have to assume, without causing a conundrum in the chat, that it would be a face mask. I know that me, especially since I'm a germaphobe, and when I bring my mask to and from the office, or if I'm going shopping, I will take a Lysol wipe and wipe the inside of my mask, which maybe is not the most beneficial way to do it, but it just is what it is. I'm terrified of germs. I would have to say that it definitely is the face mask, because doctors or nurses or any employee of a medical building wears face masks all the time, especially now. You're required to, and it's probably an article of or material of clothing that people just straight up forget about washing because they're wearing it all the time. And if I were to guess, maybe another, this is a little bit of a dirty mind, but underwear, maybe, I don't know. We'll forget about that. We'll just say it was the face mask. But anyways, back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Nicholas. And the most uncleaned piece of clothing for doctors happens to be their ties. Studies have actually shown that the average doctor hardly ever washes his tie. However, his tie manages to touch patients quite a bit if he is leaning over and examining patients. So definitely next time you see the doctor, maybe ask if he's washed his tie recently. There's also been talk about the need for wearing eye protection. Now, obviously, again, in the hospital, we don't get a choice. We have to wear eye protection. So I do actually wear a pair of goggles, and it gets pretty hot. I will admit that. It's not fun, but I guess it's better than getting coronavirus. Although I sometimes question actually how needed it is, unless you're dealing with someone that's coughing and spitting up stuff. But the CDC has kicked around the idea that along with mandatory masking, people also need to wear eye protection as well. So my question is, if the CDC came out and decided that everybody needs to start wearing eyewear, as in goggles or screens for the face shields, would you do it? And do you feel like that should be another requirement, just like the mask ordinance? And I'll give our guest an opportunity. Martha, would you like to participate?
Thank you, Mr. Tabletop leader. My thought is that this is truly a conundrum because there is limited information, not limited, let me rephrase that. The CDC has a lot of recommendations, and a recommendation does not necessarily mean that it's backed up with huge quantities of scientific studies proving that this is true. It's a recommendation based on maybe this will work. And so it is a conundrum for all of us because we're basing it on limited data sets and limited information, especially in this pandemic. In previous pandemics, we've known more, and so we've been able to make decisions on that. But in this one, we have just 6 months of good data to crunch. So we really have a hard time knowing whether face masks, eye masks, goggles, all of that really are the best way forward for everyone. I think for the general public to consider wearing goggles or masks or face masks or that kind of stuff, I don't think it would be very difficult, in my opinion, to actually enforce, especially for those of us who wear glasses. A lot of us on this call. How many of us with a mask have they fogged up immediately? Could you imagine if you had your mask and your eyeglasses and the goggles? Just thinking it might be a bit of a problem. But CDC recommends it, then we all have to decide what's going to happen. Thank you, Mr. Table Topics.
All right, one final question for this evening. I'm keeping it short, a lot of evaluations today. CDC, of course, has come out with a bunch of different recommendations and guidelines for going back to school. And I have my own views on this, but I'm just curious, reflecting on your past, do you feel like the current guidelines for reopening schools, i.e. social distancing and things like that, would be effective and be able to be followed back when you were in high school? In other words, would you have followed all of the social distancing guidelines set out by the CDC if you were in high school today? Mark Schroeder.
Do I think that the guidelines would work for schools? There is no conundrum at all for that. The answer is absolutely, positively not. It doesn't work. The only thing that I learned by going through to a private school, we had to wear ties. The only thing I learned about ties was that they were really good for dragging people down the hall by. It was not a place that was a nice place. It was a place with lots of bullies. It was a place. The only thing that's going to happen if you try to do this in schools is you're going to end up with lawsuits when one kid takes a mask off of another of assault or attempted murder. That's what you're going to end up with. It's not going to be a successful, I mean, kids are kids. Kids are kids. Kids are nasty to each other. I cannot imagine any way, shape, or form that it's going to work. We are not, I mean, we see all the pictures from South Korea, Japan, and some of the other places where all the kids are sitting nice in their desks and they've got the little mask on and they even have the face shield on. And for God's sakes, I cannot imagine what kind of a learning environment that really is for them. But the behavior there is just very different than is typical, at least for me, from my experience, and that was in private school. And I cannot imagine that it is much better in a lot of the public schools. I did not go to public school, but cannot imagine that it's not just as rough, just as unruly, and I cannot fathom any condition under which masks and true danger, if you don't have one, is not going to be an issue. Mr. Table Topics.
All right, thank you, Mark. At this time, I will ask the grammarian, did all of the speakers today qualify by using the word of the day?
Yes, everyone used the word of the day.
And timer, did everybody qualify on time?
Yes, everybody qualified on time.
All right, please send a private chat over to Marcia as far as who you felt did the best job with table topics. Our participants today were Tanya Howard, Martha Day, Nicholas Elwood, Mark Schroeder. And I will now turn the meeting over to our General Evaluator, John.
Yeah, that's me. Good evening, everybody. I'm your General Evaluator for the evening. So what is the evaluation portion of the meeting? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. We've had speeches, we've had table topic speeches, and now we need to evaluate how we did for the evening, both on an individual basis and as a whole. And I'm going to start with, we have 3 speeches tonight, so we have 3 evaluators. So I'm going to go directly into the evaluations. And we're going to start with Dagan, who evaluated Mark Schroeder. So Dagan, take it away.
All right, so thank you, Mark, for that wonderful speech tonight. I want to give you a method. I don't know what method I'm going to use because really I was having trouble trying to keep up with the timing, but I did write some notes down, so I'm just going to give you some pointers that I saw. So first of all, I kind of like the background you're using. Of course, it matches your speech, so that was really good and on point. There's a lot of good information about the different, paintings and how to look at them differently. Like the eyebrows. Eyebrows not being the Mona Lisa. It could be an unfinished work. In Van Gogh's style, that he had trouble with his eyesight. So all that kind of information, about the pictures was really good. It's kind of a conundrum. The one thing I'd like to add, though, on the different pictures, I would like to see maybe the title of the painting and who is by, too, just kind of give a visual. Because sometimes when somebody just gives me some information real quick, sometimes for me personally, it's hard to capture it. Sometimes I have to see it for a little bit to kind of remember it. So that would have been helpful on my side. And I don't know about anybody else. Maybe that would be helpful for too. And overall, it's the very end right there, that he had a humorous picture about the guy flashing. So that was really funny. And that's pretty much it. I think you did a really good job of making it interesting, because that's what you wanted to look at. It was interesting because just by all the facts that you had about the different type of paintings and how they're related, and like that, especially like that one where he drew women and overlaid it with all the different shapes and stuff. But underneath that, he probably actually drew it correctly, to scale as a woman. So, but you would never know that because it's all over. So, all those information about the painting was really good, and it did make it interesting. And of course, the use of the graphics and stuff like that, switching the paintings, that was all good. So, all in all, good painting. I would just like to see the name of the painting and the title. And overall, it was kind of humorous, and you did get audience participation too. So that was really great. So great speech, Mark. Back to you, General Evaluator.
Thank you, Dagan. There we go. Now, our next evaluator for the evening is going to be Marcia, and you're evaluating Rob's speech. Be sure and have Dagan tagged so you can see timing. And so, Marcia, can you tell us what you thought of Rob's speech?
Yes, thank you. Rob, yet again, you provided for us all a very entertaining speech. You have a great way of slowly developing your story. You took your time, and I really liked how you provided clarification of your acronyms. You had used a couple of acronyms through your talk, the IT, informational technology. You opened up first and foremost with KISS, and then UPS, and you provided the clarification that it was not the United Postal System, but however, it was the Universal Power Supply. So I really like that, because individuals have, when they're talking, they use a lot of acronyms without any type of clarification and understanding. So it really gave rise and understanding to your story. I too wrote down your gestures and your facial expressions really added to the storytelling. When you talked about when you went to speak to Kim and she was spending time with someone else, and you looked in that direction when you said that. When you talked about it was a catastrophic moment, and your facial expression, and it, with your eyes, and it was like I was right there with you. I could totally see it. I could totally visualize going into, her office, and she's there and she's engaged in something else, and you're waiting with anticipation. Also, when you talked about, you felt that she had your back, and you gestured with your hand, and you kind of looked over your shoulder. So again, painting a picture of how Kim mentored you with your 3 points of how she taught you to be calm, understanding, and making that attempt to connect with you and helping you to talk through and understanding how to come and derive at the answer and the solution, the resolution on your own. I would say, although I praise you on your pacing, there's a bit of a time where there's a pause, and it's a long pause, and I'm still learning if that's just your nature and your way. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's something that you improve on. I think it's as you're thinking, okay, I see your gesture. So so I really didn't necessarily see it as something you can improve on. So as a listener and an observer of yourself, I'm learning. But overall, it was great. Thank you for sharing. Back to you, Master.
Thank you, Marcia. Our last but not least evaluation tonight is Mark Sims, and he's evaluating Janice's speech. So, Mark, let us know your thoughts tonight.
Janice, well, is appropriate. I greatly enjoyed your speech. I'll note several things that you excelled upon. One is that the entire tone is very conversational. It's easy on the ears, and your volume and your tone draws us in. So you're a very comfortable speaker. You have a very good, colorful, and very full vocabulary. I wrote down a few words. You used the word sluggish, periphery, undaunted, fruition. So it kind of helps encourage us to use good phrasing in our speeches. I noted that in the scene where you saw the great view out the window, you really led us up to that well. The tone, the cadence changed. Something caught my eye. Okay, that really draws us in. And then you noted the magnificent view outside. And again, very expressive description. The view was so great that it put Van Gogh and Rembrandt, these other artists, to shame. You also gave us a very poignant story, talking about the Thanksgiving meal some months after your husband had passed away. For starters, you noted we laughed, we cried, we joked. And then it was especially poignant when you invoked his name, Larry. That made it, even though we don't know him, makes that more real to us. It was very poignant. And then I like the wow repetition. Really was strong, really helped keep you on focus. As far as what to work on, just I think 2 minor points. One is that in the introduction, those seconds are very precious. You want to use that to the maximum effect. And you started off with, when Rob asked me to speak here, maybe you could have made that more direct or more powerful. We all have wow moments. Here is mine. That is a possibility. And then also early in the speech, you made a reference to a triple message and you reeled off a few points. And I was struggling to write those down. At first, I thought it was going to be kind of like how a preacher gives 3 points and then elaborates on each. But if that was a really important part of the speech, maybe it was just a little fast. And to challenge yourself, hard to come up with something, but maybe as an ending. And what is your wow moment? What's influenced your life? Maybe a way to connect the audience. But overall, we totally enjoyed your speech. Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Mark. All right, I thought all our evaluators did a great job tonight, and now I need to check on timing. Dagan, you qualified on time. Did the other 2 evaluators qualify on time?
Yes, they both did.
All right, thank you. So now if everybody would take a moment and send a private chat to Marcia with who you thought did the best job as evaluation tonight. Remember, it was Dagan, and then Marcia and Mark Sims. All right, thank you. Also, any comments you have to make about any evaluations or any speeches or you heard tonight, you can always send a chat to that person that you'd like to compliment. Now, let's start with a little evaluation, then we'll go to the couple of duty holders that we do have tonight. And that is, I thought we had an excellent meeting tonight. We had 3 speakers, which we haven't had 3 speakers on a given night in quite a long time. I know, Nicholas, this was your first time doing Toastmaster. Thought you did a good job with that. Great, thanks. I was going to comment that I wish you would have elaborated a little more on your theme, but then you brought it back at the end after we had all the speeches and made a few comments and the quotes and stuff that you had, and I thought that was great. So thank you for doing that. But all in all, great job first time. Not too many little glitches. We're going good. So, were you nervous?
Yeah, a little bit yesterday. I mean, you know, I kind of took it in strides tonight. It was fun. I've had really good time, I think, with everyone. So yeah, fun.
All right, good, thanks. We'll get you Toastmaster again real soon. All right, our table topics master this evening was Lee. And Lee, I thought it was interesting. It was kind of hard to get on our theme and everything, but the thought line and the table topics questions that you presented were all very interesting. And I knew it was a doctor's tie, but I work in the hospital too, because I've heard this more than once. I don't like the idea of having to wear goggles or a face mask. Maybe I'll just wear my sunglasses everywhere I go. Oh, Nicholas, use the Lysol wipes on the outside of your mask, not on the inside of your mask. That scares me. It's like, don't put Lysol next to your mouth. Anyway, sorry, being a daddy, come on, tell you.
Very good point.
All right. Also, all our speakers tonight, I thought all our speakers had very interesting stories. I like Mark. I liked your art tour. That was very interesting. I thought it was done well. I was too, like Dagan, waiting for your dolly to show up there at the very end, behind you, besides being your background.
May have a teddy bear, but I don't have a dolly.
Oh, okay, fine.
Sorry.
No dolly stories either. All right. Let me see. Lost my train of thought. Who are the other speakers? My gosh, I already forgot. Rob, good job tonight. Still rolling in from Buffalo. So you gonna come back one of these days, or are you staying up there for a while?
Plan is to leave tomorrow to head back.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. Then you're saying quarantine for 2 weeks?
No, I need to check that out, I guess. I didn't even think about that. Maybe I do. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Don't worry, the police will stop you when you get off the jetway if you do have to quarantine.
Yeah. And then Janice, wonderful, wonderful speech. My goodness, you're talented. So I just loved it. That was just so interesting. It was almost kind of like an icebreaker too. We got to know you. We got to know some things about you since you're, brand new to, visiting with us. And so I've liked it. It was a great speech. And thanks you for all the information. Thanks you for participating by giving a speech. Okay. Now I'm going to move on to our duty holders for tonight. And our duty holders, we only have 2. Let's go. Lee, you are our posture monitor. Can you give us your evaluation? Weren't you posture monitor? Oh, Mark Sims is posture monitor. Excuse me. Mark Sims.
Yes. I noted several good uses of body language during the presentations. Mark Schroeder imitated a person pounding the table with a crayon. which was expressive. Now, Rob got us all to raise our hands in his discussion. And then Rob, you had very good gestures throughout. Like, for example, you noted you were going 100 miles an hour and you did this. At one point, you noted you had an epiphany, and I think you almost did something close to a timeout or a perpendicular hands. It was a very interesting gesture. And then there were 3 things you remembered, and you emphasized it with 3. So good gestures. And Martha, I noted in your table topics, likewise, very good gestures when you were describing the face mask and the eyewear. And Nicholas, sometimes when you were talking, you were very much in what we could see, the arms at your side. Now, at some point later on in the table topics, I did get to see a little more visibility on the hands, but it was just interesting, jumped out at me a little bit, just for the most part, the hands consistently, or arms consistently at the side. And that's my report, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Lee. Excellent. Now we're going to move to our other duty holder, and that's Tanya, and she was both the counter and the grammarian tonight. So take your pick and start, Tanya, please.
All right. As the counter, I have Dagan with 3 ahs. Marcia, I had you with 5 uhs and an And then Martha, I got you with 1 at the end. John, you had an ah, and a you know. But pretty good. We're doing really well. And then I thought the meeting was excellent on great vocabulary and grammar. Mark Sims, poignant, colorful, excel, and epiphany. Mark Schroeder, fathom. And of course, Janice did a great job of showing us how to intertwine and weave in wonderful vocabulary throughout her speech. Unnecessary, sluggish, slumping, periphery, phenomenal, undaunted. And I love the way that you went from potty training and connected it to potty mouth. I thought that was very clever. So excellent job tonight. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you, Tanya. Now I'd like to go on to call for a vote of the big 3. Now the big 3 this evening is our Toastmaster, Nicholas Elwood, or our Table Topics Master, Lee King, or myself, John Vessels, as General Evaluator. So if you would take a moment, send a private chat to Marcia telling you who you thought did the best job of Big 3. And now, if you're ready, Mr. Sims, want to move on to our business meeting, sir?
Yes, I am ready. And for starters, want to recognize our guest. Janice doesn't really seem like a guest anymore. We're glad to have you for a second straight week. Please come back and join us as much as you possibly can. Whenever we eventually start meeting back in person again, we're not going to ask you to move up here, although feel free to do that if you want to. But obviously on Zoom, we're very glad to see you as much as we can. And also, Martha, first-time guest, very pleased to see you. We appreciate your participation tonight. And for folks that are joining us for the first time, we like to get a little feedback from you, as in what brought you here, what do you think of the meeting, and what can we do for you?
Sure. Happy to be here. Very pleased. I really like your group. I like the interactions, and you're very supportive, but you're also very honest, and I appreciate that. I've been at other guests at other Toastmasters, and it's a lot of, oh, that was really good, and I'm like, did we hear the same speech? Because that, you could have given them some direction, I think. So I appreciate that about the group as a whole. I am originally from Seattle. I've lived in Dallas for the last 12 years, and I I'll count it for myself. Ding, ding. Again, have my own business. I work in travel, so it's been a bit sluggish, as you could imagine. But we're hoping this fall people will begin to once again expand out, at least into the nation, if not into the world. But it's been an interesting 6 months, I will say, to be quietly trying to hold together a business that, yeah, there you go. Anyways, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. And believe me, you're very welcome to visit again. And if you reach the point where you'd like to become a member of the club, we'd be very pleased to have you. But thank you for coming tonight, and please join us again as much as you can. I have a few orders of business I want to go over. One, Rob, I had seen an email from you earlier in the week about a Tuesday night TLI. Did you attend that? Oh.
Yes, I attended that. Also from our club, Dawn Levy attended it as well. It was Pathways for Everybody, or everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Well, how was it, the training?
It was good. It was stuff that I pretty much had already known, but it was good to have a refresher course. And also it was good to see Dawn there. She asked some questions. I actually asked some questions. So it was pretty interactive. It was about 18 people total, if I remember. So it wasn't overwhelming. People actually were able to get in their questions without problems. It was approximately 45 to 50 minutes. So it wasn't, horribly long. And if it comes up again, I will recommend it again to everybody. I don't know if we're going to have that opportunity again, but if not, I tried to record it. So we'll see if that worked out for me. If it did, then maybe I will post it with permission of the people involved on our YouTube, on Mark's YouTube channel, AKA Dallas Social Toastmasters. So that's pretty much it. But if it comes up again, if on the last chance TLI or something like that, then I will reference that probably when I first send it out, and then maybe again on the day of the meeting. I did do this one, like you said, it was on the day of the meeting. I sent out an email just to be sure that people have at least a last minute opportunity to join. But I think it's good for everybody. Most of us have already started Pathways, but it's something that I think that it can just help refresh some things, because we don't always go in and actually log in and take a look at things. They're actually changing the site almost on a regular basis to try to tweak it to make it a little bit more user-friendly. So maybe in a year or two, it's going to be amazing. Right now, it's getting better. And I would say almost, like I said, almost day by day.
Thank you for making us aware of that. And one thing I want to bring up, and this is maybe a little bit early, but there's going to be an area contest, speech contest on October 3rd. So we'll be wanting to think in terms of when we would have a club competition in order to select a representative to go to the area competition. So again, tail end of July, a little bit early, but let's all keep that in the back of our minds. And if you have any great inspiration, please bring that up. And I had, I guess, a point of order. Monday morning, Mark, I saw the email about the social hour. Was that Sunday a few days ago, or is that the Sunday coming up?
We did have a discrepancy on that. I had somebody try to join this last Sunday, and it was a full week late. So
okay.
Not when this last Sunday, it was the week before that. And I guess I probably sent it out on, I'm thinking Friday. I can't remember. I either sent out a notice that I was going to do it on Thursday or Friday, and then sent out the URL, I believe, the next day. But that was for last week. We did not have one this immediately last Sunday. We'll have another one in a week or so. Okay, good. Because the first thing I thought is, oh, great, I missed that. Didn't check email frequently enough. Not to do them every week. We thought every week was a little bit. I totally agree. Every week would be pushing it a little. It looked like Blue was interested in joining us. I saw her name on there, so that's really great if she'd have an opportunity to in the future. She's actually the person who almost joined my quarantine cocktail hour with my sisters as a result. Because that was on the same day, and she was trying to get in, and I use the same Zoom account for that at the moment.
Well, that is funny. Just party crasher. Never thought that about her.
Yeah, me either, to be honest.
And before we go to the winners of the various competitions, is there any business any other club member has to bring up?
Yeah, actually, a few things. First of all, I believe everybody probably got an email this week that I guess this year, since the international convention is online, it's open to everybody. It's free as long as you're a Toastmaster member. So I would definitely encourage you to take advantage of that if your membership's paying for it. I know that everything's happening on French time, but still, definitely, if you have the opportunity, try to catch as much of that as you can. I do believe you have to register ahead of time to go back through your emails and register. The only other thing that comes to my mind is it is the end of July. I'm assuming that we're not going back to Ozona, but we probably need to discuss that further and decide if, what we need to tell them about the month of August.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. My impression is that it's too early to start meeting in person because I don't think the news is positive enough yet, but is that the consensus of the club?
It's my understanding that we've had 4 days of decline. We have certainly not had 14, which means we are still in the red and have not even moved to yellow at this point.
Okay, so it does seem a little bit early to start back. So I don't know the last time you communicated with the zonas, Mark, but it probably would be a stretch that we would be back there in August.
Yeah, the last time would have been right before the beginning of July. I'll just need to re-inform them.
Okay.
I don't think they'll be very surprised.
Okay.
They're at least making it, but they're making it because of the patio and things.
And thank you. And thank you, Lee, for bringing that up. I actually had that written down and right over it. Is there any additional club business to bring up?
Just a couple, just 3 quick ones, mostly as a facilitator. First of all, I want to thank our big 3. In most cases, the big 3 were very good at making sure to say to pin the timer, which meant that I did not have to get involved and interrupt the meeting in order to remind people to pin the timer. And secondly, I did not need, as it turns out, this particular t-shirt tonight, because almost everybody remembered to take themselves off of mute. It really, really helped as well. We had very few occurrences of people on mute. And finally, the third thing, this is to Tanya as our grammarian. Tanya, thank you particularly for not calling me out for pubic hair. I have had many meetings that I have fared much worse at. So thank you.
I thought about it, but no.
I bet you did.
You were brave enough to say it, so I wanted to give you credit.
So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
And actually, Mark, there's one thing I meant to tell you, but I thought I would just kind of tell everybody. Because when we're sharing our screen, it's easy to, start sharing. But I noticed that your pointer was right there on the middle of all of the paintings. So if we're sharing our screen, just make sure that we're moving our cursor out of the way.
Oh, good point. I didn't notice. I'm sure I will notice it in the recording, though. Thank you.
Okay. And Mark, I'll take an extra large size t-shirt, please. So feel free to send that my way.
Gotcha.
And at this point, I'd like to ask Marcia to please tell us the winners of the various competitions.
All righty, thank you. All righty, I have my. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this evening, for Best Speaker, we have Janice.
Thank you.
for best table topic speaker, we have none other, Ms. Tanya. And for best evaluator this evening, we have Mark Sims. All right, drum roll. For the best of the big three, we have Nicholas. All right. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
And thank you, Marcia. And any last opportunity, anything we need to go over? All right, thank y'all so much. Terrific meeting. Thank you again to our guests. Y'all have a great weekend.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Nicholas.
thank y'all. Night.
I will close the meeting and stop the recording in 3, 2.